I'm Arlan. I am the managing partner of Backstage Capital. I have invested in more than 200 companies led by underestimated founders, women, people of color, LGBTQ plus, etc., in less than a decade. And I wanted to react to this podcast that I saw that I listened to with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway, specifically what Scott had to say. I'm a fan of Kara Swisher's. I like her. I like her work, admire her work. I don't know much of anything about Scott. I know that they are on the same podcast called Pivot, and that he is well respected, and he has been described to me as very, very intelligent. In fact, he was described to me today as too intelligent to say the things he said on this latest podcast. So I just wanted to give my take on it for anyone who is interested, just to counter, because that's the beauty of having a voice and specifically having one online, is that if you listen to something, if you watch something, you don't agree with it, you now have your own platform, through YouTube or LinkedIn or X or uh, any of the social channels, and that's what I'm going to exercise today. So I'm just looking at this list that I created, um, from the section of the podcast. This came out, I believe, either yesterday or today, first week of June 2024. So essentially what they were talking about, a caller sent in a question asking how they felt about Fearless Fund, a venture fund in Georgia that had been sued for giving away $25,000 grants, sued because, as it was stated, they felt that it was discriminatory to say that you give grants to Black women. And I believe it's women of color, to be honest, because I've seen a lot of the people who have been given grants. I've been a part of it, and I don't think it's only Black women, but I do think it's women of color. And so this was in court for months, and very recently it came back that they lost this court case. And of course, the fight goes on, but the question was, how did Kara and Scott feel about it? So Kara said many things about how she thinks it's ridiculous that it happened, and she gave some very eloquent rundowns of why she thought so. Now, it was Scott who got my attention. It was sent in to me by someone, and he said a few things. You'd have to listen to it all to know exactly what he said, but he said a few things, paraphrasing. He talked about how he felt that having visible characteristics as a basis for affirmative action is a bad idea in general. That's just his take. And then I was kind of with him there. I mean, I kind of like, I don't agree, but it wasn't so far-fetched that it was insulting. But then he said that one of the reasons he thought this was that, because he said at first he was with the Fearless Fund and he thought, yeah, that's terrible. But then he said he went to the site to look at who was receiving the grants. And he found two companies. One, he said, was Slutty Vegan, and one was Lent something, and I'll find it in a second. Now, first of all, I want to say that I believe that he was looking at their investment firm portfolio rather than the actual grants that were given out. Fearless Fund is a 40 to $50 million fund. I am an LP limited partner investor in that fund, so I know that it's a large fund for its size. They invest millions of dollars into companies, hundreds of thousands of dollars into individual companies. They have a portfolio and run this very well. They give out $25,000 grants to help people who are pre-funding needs, or at least help them get to the point of being fundable. I do not believe Slutty Vegan, a $100 million plus company by its last round raised, is a recipient of this grant. So I think Scott got that wrong. In the comments, if you know, let me know. But I think he got that wrong, first of all. Second of all, Slutty Vegan is a vegan burger joint, and it has several locations, and it's really awesome, um, for a few reasons. What he said was he changed his mind and was now against this because he saw that these two founders, one of them he felt had a lot of adversity, and one of him that he felt that because she went to a nice college, that she should not receive this grant. Because essentially, and again, this is my opinion, you can argue if I receive this correctly or not, but he's essentially saying that there needs to be some sort of adversity index, some sort of Olympics of adversity. So you can be black, but if you weren't, raised by a crackhead, you know, then, and I said that in jest, obviously I don't use those terms in general, but if you weren't raised by, if you weren't down and out, then you're not worthy of a $25,000 business grant to get your business going. I will also use this time to point out that several years ago, a few young men that you may recognize, may not, Alexis Ohanian, Sam Altman. So Alexis Ohanian started Reddit. Sam Altman started OpenAI. Um, Drew Houston from from Dropbox. Brian Chesky and Joe and the rest of them, Nim, Joe Nim from Airbnb. These young men have something in common besides being white men. They received approximately $25,000. And I don't even know if it was dilutive capital, but it was some sort of capital, probably dilutive, back in, the two tens and the early two tens from Y Combinator. And they received, in addition to that, they received mentorship, and they received connections, and they received their first customers, and they went on to greatness. This is exactly what Fearless Fund is aiming to do. They just simply did not want to burden those recipients with dilutive capital, meaning they didn't want to exchange that early in their company equity, which I think is admirable. So going back, and I promise you, in those early days of Y Combinator, there was not one Black woman in sight unless she was serving food. And let's be real, that's what's really going on here. So that's my take there. Um, I strongly disagree that there should be some sort of adversity index to say whether this Black person is Black enough to receive a grant for Black people. That is ridiculous. Now the next point, one of the next points Scott made was that having a race-based affirmative action, which he calls it affirmative action, mandate on anything creates hostility and resentment. You know what else creates hostility and resentment? Black women receiving less than 0.000% of all venture funding in the country when we make up 7 to 8% of the country. Black men, same. Latinx and Latin people, the same, even less. Hostility and resentment also comes from being shot in the street on camera while the police go acquitted. It also comes from being choked out and killed in front of multiple witnesses. It also comes from being shot while sleeping in bed. It also comes from being water hosed for wanting to vote, and so on and so on. I can go on and on and on. And you may say that's in the past, but it is a recent past, and it's also a current. It's obviously current. Right now, unfortunately, it is happening to someone of color right now. So the hostility and resentment that it's causing to get a $25,000 grant to someone because they are not white is it's weak, right? You have bigger problems. If that's your biggest problem, is that someone over there that you have nothing to do with is getting $25,000 while you sit and work on your own life, then you have a really blessed life. The next thing is again talking about these examples of people who didn't face adversity. Someone who was raised by immigrant parents went to Um, well, actually, he's saying this is the one that did face it. Immigrant parents. So he always also thinks that's sort of adversity. Spent some time in prison, faced significant, whereas someone else had a stable family background and should not have received it. I mean, that makes my skin crawl to read that again. The next one was, he said, this is about education. He said that there are a greater percentage of Black women now attending college compared to white men. And that is true. Black women today are the most educated, currently educated, being educated women um, in the country. I mean, sorry, the educated group in the country. Celebrate that. That's beautiful. Can you evoke images in your mind of other things that have happened to Black women that are not that celebratory? What he's saying is now Black women have it all. These educational disparities no longer exist. They're not as severe as they once were. I don't think he's saying they don't exist, but he's saying they're very much so. That has changed. He cut Kara off and he said that's changed when she tried to bring up just these disparities. First of all, the reason that's the case is because of programs that have helped that happen. As Kara mentioned, white men are not necessarily smarter than Black women, but they have an incredibly outsized amount of board seats and seats, at great colleges and can create companies that get funded over and over again that fail and they keep getting funded. Whereas Black women can have revenue generation, can be employing people. And I see it every day because remember, I've invested in more than 200 companies led by Black women and people of color and men, etc. They can have all these things and not get funded. So, first of all, the reason that there are more Black women getting educated in this way is because part of it is because of programs like this. So that tells you if you're going to use that to say that this is a good thing and that's why we shouldn't receive more, use it the other way too. Use the same logic. Be intellectually honest with yourself and with others, Scott, and others who think this way. Second of all, um, Scott, I don't know you, and I'm not. I really have no opinion. I don't have like a feeling. Oh, I don't like you, or I do like you. I don't know you, so I don't have that opinion. But I will say to you that based on these few minutes that I listened to, nothing else, I don't think you would be able to last 5 minutes as a Black woman in the United States. I don't think you have the the stomach for it, the Constitution. I don't think you have it because yeah, well, we'll go into that another time, but I don't think you would. And so just because someone has a degree, it doesn't mean that all their other problems have just simply disappeared. It doesn't mean that every single day of their lives they have to look around or they don't have to look around to make sure that someone isn't attacking them in some way or another. It doesn't mean that they have to think about, can I wear my hair a certain way when I walk into this interview, when I walk into work, when I walk into school? Or is that going to change my whole day by doing that? They have to they have to think about their their aggressiveness, their tone. Like even this video, there are some people watching this, whether you believe me or not, there are some people watching this who are like, oh my God, she's so much. She's so aggressive. She's so whatever. She's such a victim. She's just, they're going to have all these opinions and they're not listening to what I'm saying. This is what happens to us every single moment of every single day. So if you want to talk about adversity, if you want to really do an adversity Olympics, we all win a gold. We win a new mineral that that it's not a called mineral, it's something. We win that because we win if we're going to do apples to apples. Um, Another thing Scott talks about is he supports the idea of allocating capital with the bias towards people who have faced headwinds, again, adversity. He's very focused on this. He's very much so looking for, it seems, this fairness. Kara calls, she says there's no meritocracy, there's a mirrorocracy, which I think is brilliant. But he is very much so like, I'm standing on, and by the way, I want to say, Kara, girl, you are a saint. You are a saint, girl. Anyway, he's very much so standing on this principle. Like he is a very principled person and he wants to be fair and balanced. Again, I'm just telling you my opinion of what I heard. And I don't think he quite understands how little of this he understands, if that makes sense. He is so far off. And I think he's considered to be someone who is an ally. I think he's considered to be someone who is non-problematic. And I think truly he caught Kara off guard. I would imagine she did not know that he had these strong feelings, which means to me that there are several people that I know who probably feel the same way. And when I'm going around talking about Fearless Fund and I'm advocating and I'm saying, I'm going to do all these things and we're going to do all these things, their silence or head nodding is probably masking this feeling of, actually, I don't agree with you, but I don't want to get in a fight with you. I get it. I'm hard to fight with. But it's interesting. I think if you're somebody who is watching this and you've watched this far and you feel the way Scott does, I would encourage you to do some more research. I would encourage you to um, think through your own bias, think through your own experiences, and then try to put yourself in other people's shoes much better than you do today. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to call you anything. I'm not going to say you're dumb. I don't think you're dumb if you feel this way. I think you're misguided. I think there's a sadness in my heart when I think about it. Scott has acknowledged that there are systemic issues in venture capital. He definitely had a point in the interview where he really said, Kara, you have me thinking about this in a different way. But then, and I thought, oh, there's some hope here. She got to him, and then he went right back on his BS. To be frank, the reason I feel comfortable talking about this is because I know that it is fair and balanced, and that Scott can choose never to see this or hear about this or care about it, or he can reply freely, or something in between, right? Or he can come at me. He can call me all kinds of names. That to me is beautiful. That it's wonderful that we both get to have as much say. And he may have a larger audience. I may have a larger audience. I don't know because I don't know him. But I do think we both have a shot at getting our word heard. And I think that's wonderful. That, by the way, is all we're asking for as Black women in venture. All we're asking for is that level playing field, is the option. Doesn't mean that we have to win everything. Doesn't mean that we have to be the richest. By the way, we will be. Some of us will be rich. Doesn't mean we have to always get everything and then there's nothing left for white men or white people. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, can we have the same ability to get our voice and our message heard? Can we have the same ability to get our company out into the world that an Adam Newman gets, the founder of WeWork, gets every few years? He gets hundreds of millions of dollars to play, to tinker, and most times to plummet and take people with him. Can we get that? Can we get a little bit of that Y Combinator type innovative capital? A little bit of that. Give me your mentorship. Give me your praise. Put me on some lists, yes. But can we also get some capital? Again, I say this as someone who spent the last decade plus not only advocating for this, but doing it. 200 companies. We've seen thousands of companies. I've invested in 30 venture funds all around this. And people on my team have been white men, Black men, Latinx, Black, white, everything. Investments have been all over the place. We have some investments in white men. But let's really think about what we're really saying when we say that Black women should not receive $25,000 in friends and family non-dilutive capital from a philanthropic bucket. Now, going back, one last thing I'll say is that, again, this goes back to what I think Scott does not have full information on. He talked about, towards the end of his rant, he said that Melinda Gates probably had better footing and giving out $1 billion because hers was philanthropic, and the state should not be able to tell people what they can do with their philanthropic capital. First of all, it's not all philanthropic. Some of it is investment, and it's for women. But I think the difference, Scott, and I'm going to be honest with you, I think the difference is that you are more okay with a gender issue than a race issue. So as long as white women are getting something, because Melinda Gates will give it to white women too, it's not worth it fighting for. Also, Fearless Fund is being sued for their philanthropic efforts. So if you say that philanthropic capital should not be touched and we should be able to do whatever we want with our money, did you know that the very thing you just spent 10 minutes arguing down was philanthropic? Because their venture fund is separate and is not being sued because it does not have the same mandates. Let's get some more information. Beyonce says, ladies, let's get information. She's also saying, let's get information. Holler at me. BackstageInvest.com. Holler.